All right, peace, y'all. Let's dive straight into it. Hope you're having a good Monday, starting off the week. Mondays is always me laying out what the week is gonna look like. It's been busy as usual, but busy is always good. I'd rather be busy than not be busy. So I want to dive into this topic. Very, very, very interesting topic, and that topic is rural land versus urban or suburban or land that sits in city areas. And I find this an interesting topic because our whole program teaches you how to invest in not one type of land, rural land and urban land, but we always say to new investors, I strongly suggest that you start in rural markets. And for most of the people, they're unaware that these rural markets, for some of us, we're unaware that they even exist. For some of us never look out our own backyard. Some of us never look beyond where we're from. Some of us still in a certain radius of mind frame. Some of us never leave, right? So there's a whole nother world that's out there, and it's a whole nother world that you can look into, not to live. Because I think when we say this, a lot of people say, well, who's living out there? Well, there are some people that live out there, right? And there's plenty opportunity out there, but I get it. If you coming from a suburban area, if you've been living there your whole life, including myself, I've lived in a suburban area, not too far from the city, my whole entire life. So I get it to just jump up and say, hey, I'm going rural or I'm going off grid. That takes a certain type of person, right? To just get up and relocate and change everything that they've known their whole entire life. However, we've been screaming that just because you don't want to live there, you can invest there. Do you care where your money come from? Does that make you upset that you're investing in rural land? So I want to explore that, what investing in rural land looks like in contrast to investing in urban or suburban areas that you probably think is the only place that you can make money, especially when it comes to investing in land. So let's stay there, right? Rural vacant markets. First of all, 47% of the country is vacant and undeveloped. Do you think the 47% that's vacant and undeveloped is a city area or city areas? No, more than likely, the city areas, you probably are aware of what's considered to be a city areas, right? You can do a Google search. This is like common sense thing. You can do a Google search to figure out if you don't know just by living, right? And hearing this from a day-to-day basis. Chicago, Atlanta, New York City, Philadelphia. These are all major cities. It's like, this is like 101 geography. We learned this should have learned it back in elementary school. These are major cities, right? Now, in contrast to rural markets, which one is more valuable? Most people are unaware in rural markets that some of these markets hold just as much as value as then the city areas. If you were asking me, does it hold more value than a city area? I'm going to say no, because it's the reason why they're the city areas, because they're more populated and they're more built out. So that's why common sense is more valuable. But the point that we want to drive home is you can invest in these rural markets because there's money there. So we've been screaming this for the past 2 years. So today I wanted to do a dive in. We're in the age of AI and things like that. So I put a prompt into Chat GPT, asking Chat GPT which was more valuable, rural land or urban land. Let's see what Chat GPT spit out. Now, mind you, we've been saying this, some of this same stuff that I'm going to read to you, we've been screaming this before Chat GPT came out. We've been screaming this since day one that this was the way to go. So don't listen to me, because I know everybody now, a good portion of people believe this everything that everybody else say, Google, AI. So let's listen to what AI has to say about investing in rural land versus urban land. So it says here, whether rural or urban land is better to invest in depends on your investment goals, budget, and risk tolerance. Here's a side-by-side breakdown to help you decide. Urban land, pros and cons. All right. Urban land would be suburban city areas where it's going to be heavily populated at, right? Most people are going to live in these areas. So let's see what it has to say about that. It says the pros of having urban land is its high demand, stronger resale and development potential due to growing population and limited space. I agree, 10,000%. It's going to be in more demand. It's going to be more competition. If I would had a side by side or a piece of paper, I will be writing this. I will be putting this, the pros here. Then I'm going to go to rural and I'll put the pros there. It's going to be in more demand. We've been saying forever, it's going to be highly competitive, right? So for everyday people, this is why you can't ever get your investment portfolio started, because everyday people, the price of entry or cost of entry is too high for everyday people to play in these areas, right? It says it here, highly competitive. It also says the pros, you will be able to do more with these properties faster. I agree that if you could land vacant land in a city area or suburban area where it's heavily populated, common sense would tell you don't even have to know about this space. Common sense should tell you that you would not, if it's a good piece of land, you would probably not have a problem getting rid of that land, right? We all would agree to that, right? You probably wouldn't have a problem finding a buyer for that. In fact, you'll find a buyer rather fast if you can get your hands on it, right? So let's continue to read what Chat GPT says is the pros. Another pro, utilities and infrastructure, access to water, electricity, sewage, roads, and internet. Accurate, 10,000% accurate. All of these things are readily available because it's built out already. People have been living there probably for X amount of years and it's built out. So all of these things are readily available. This is what makes this type of area more popular than rural markets. Let's continue. Zoning versatility, often zoned for residential, commercial, or mixed use. Now, this can be an asset or this can be a hindrance in this case, depending on what your end goal is. I don't like properties inside of the city limits based on one thing. You're restricted on what you can do with the property, right? If they zone you as residential, what does that mean? You can only build on it. Typically a residential home, then they'll break down what kind of residential home, whether that's a single, whether that's a duplex, whatever they're allowing on that property. For us as land flippers, clearly that type of property sells. But what works best for us is property that's unrestricted when buyers have the luxury of doing what they want to do with the property, whether that's a mobile home. These are the things that our community have been known to frown on, or this type of talk of these things I'm going to mention has not been popular, has not been cool, has not been sexy. Mobile homes has not been sexy in our community, right? But mobile home property sell really, really well. Mobile home land or land that's zoned for mobile homes, we can't keep that in our inventory. I only could speak for our experience. We cannot keep that piece of land in our inventory, especially if it's decent land. People want to have the luxury to be able to do what they want to do with their land without having any restrictions. So we won't dive into that yet. Let's continue to read on what Chat GPT says about urban land. It says faster ROI, easier to flip or lease for immediate cash flow. Now, I can understand why it may be saying that. But rural land is also easier to flip if you have a good piece, right? The catch is not just going and investing in rural land that's in the middle of nowhere where there's no motion. That doesn't make sense. The catch is to identify a rural market that has motion, that people want to still interact with or deal with or do something in those areas. That's the catch. That's what we teach you how to target. Common sense says, why would I go in the middle of the desert where there's no life or movement and expect to make a profit? That makes no sense. You won't make a profit. However, there's rural markets that they use maybe an hour, maybe 2, maybe 3 hours away from a suburban or a city area that people love. How do I know? We sell them all day long. You can do a Google search and you can know yourself. It'll explain it. In fact, at one point, they were calling these Zoom cities. What's a Zoom city? When the COVID-19 came, no one wanted to be on top of each other. If you was in a city area, you remember that the cities was isolated, desolate. You couldn't even find people. You had to be 6 feet apart online and things of that nature. So everybody wanted separation and isolation. So everybody moved or either stayed inside of their homes, and some got up and they moved out into rural America. Why is that? Zoom cities became popular because once they wanted that space, they still wanted to have the luxury, if they worked in the city, to get back to the city within an hour or within 2 hours. Or if they just wanted to have use to the city, whether that was for recreational needs, go out to eat, go out for dinner, whatever it was. That's what a Zoom city was, and it became really popular. They wanted it to be able to commute within an hour or 2 hours back to whatever that highly populated area was. So it became really, really, really popular. We'll dig into more of this rule. I just want to continue to read what Chat Gpt says about urban versus rural. It says the cons of urban land: high costs. Entry prices are significantly higher. We started this live off by saying that. Everyday people attempting to break in to a market that has blown through the roof, that has the heavy investors have cornered the market. It's tough. It's just tough. It's tough to do. And that's why we find most people never get started, because most people think they can only invest in where they're from. And they don't go out and seek other investment opportunities. Some are just unaware that these opportunities are not too far from them. Because if I break down, I don't even have to know where you're from, but it all works the same. Regardless if you're in a city area, not too far from you in your state, it gets rural, whatever state you're in. Ask yourself, what's your rural areas? Outside of your city limits, you don't have like, maybe a few states have like 2 cities that's really has a lot of traffic going on. Maybe Texas, and Texas is huge. Houston, Dallas. But in contrast to the entire Texas, that's relatively small, right? So when you look at it from that standpoint, most of these states are rural markets, most of them. I did a post last week on North Carolina, Raleigh, North Carolina, which is Wake County. Raleigh sits in Wake County, in contrast to a county called Madison County. Raleigh, or Wake County, has a population of over 1.1 million people. Madison County only had a population of 21,000 people. Now that's rural in contrast to 1.1 million people, right? But when we pull comps and things that was on the market for sale, Madison County had 215 properties, vacant land properties on the market for sale. Wake County had 222. So it slightly beat it. Now, how is it possible that This rural market that only has a fraction of the population that lives there has just as many properties on the market in contrast to this highly populated, unpopular county. How's that possible? Did you know that exists? So all of these things that go on right underneath your nose, and we're just saying that clearly. If you're on this live, clearly, if you have the money to go out and invest in the city area, go out and do it. We all know that you'll make your money if you can land a property or a piece of vacant land. We all know that. But for most of us, right? Most of us, our audience, our listeners, they're new to this concept. So we've been preaching, go out in an area where you could afford, where everyday people should be able to, if you're interested in real estate. This is a good entry point as far as price point to begin. Because you don't have to pull from your 401k. You know, you don't have to save up for 5 years to get started. Will you need money? Absolutely. This still is under the umbrella of real estate, and real estate costs. So will you need money? Absolutely. It's not free. But do you need the kind of money that most people think that you need? All right, I'm going to continue to read. Then it breaks down rural land, pros and cons. The pros, it says it at the top. The pros of rural land: low entry price, cheaper per acre, allowing you to buy more land or diversify across properties. Ding, 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 ding. This is all the Acre Boys have been saying since the inception of coming on social media. There's a lower entry price, allowing the common person to get involved. Right? I'm going to continue to read. Fewer restrictions, less zoning regulation in many counties, creative uses, farming, RV parks, off-grid homes. And this is where we make the money at, because this is exactly what they want. This is exactly what we sell the most of. Recreational use property. Rural land that's used or zone agriculture is used for one of few things. We've been doing this for years now. They use it to hunt. They use it to put a small cabin on. They use it to go camping. They use it for recreational uses. There are all kind of things that they're using it for. Let's just put it under the umbrella of recreational uses, right? That's going to be your end buyer. Someone, I'm reading the comments, they say, which one is more profitable? Well, for me, rural is more profitable the way we're set up. That's a loaded question, because clearly if you plan in a city area, it's going to cost you more. It's going to cost you way more. But it just depends on your budget and what you're working with. If you were loaded on the front end as far as budget and you could afford the city area, it's going to be more profitable. But if you're coming up or attempting to come up through land, right, through the practices that we use, rural land is going to be more profitable because it'll afford you at a lower cost or a lower price point to get involved in the upsell or the ceiling. There is none. We show you how to get it at a discounted price, right? And then rural market, as it says, is less competition. We have the opportunity to go after more. Then we use something that's called deal stacking. What's deal stacking? If I'm a land flipper, deal stacking is I want to try to stack 3, 4, 5, as many as deals in a calendar month as I could to sell. That's how we maximize profits. So if I had 5 deals from a rural market, and we would find them a lot faster. That's why I always say, I hate to say which is more profitable, because they both are profitable, depending on your strategy. So you may spend more time in the city area trying to get a deal. And once you have that deal, depending on the end use of it, if it's to build, right, either you're going to do one or two things: sell it outright to a contract. I'm not going to go too deep because then I may lose people. But you can do something where if you go and get the permits to it and all of that, that's called entitlement, land entitlements. That's way more profitable, right, if you go that route. But that takes time. to get permits and all of those things. So if I'm in a rural market and I got 5 deals, I can find them a lot faster. That's for sure. I can answer that for you outright. I can find the rural market deals a lot faster than I can land the deals in the city area. Is that like that? It's not one concrete answer. Is that like that all the time? Absolutely not. I don't know. All I could tell you, if you're not shooting your shot, you won't ever hit. I had a young lady in our community. I told her, don't go. And she first came into the community. I said, try rural markets first. She did the total opposite. And she went to a heavily populated area and she landed the deal where she made $100,000 on it. So I don't know. So all I can say to that is, if you're not shooting your shot, you're not going to hit anything in a rural market or a city market. We never know why people sell. Like, we can't say, right? Who's to say? I don't know why people sell their property or decide to sell their property. I can't say whether they're in the city area or rural market. We don't know what people or why. We have some indications why they do it based upon the experience we have from dealing with this. We have indications of why they say it, and we can name a few of those. At the top of the list, they just need the money. They're not using the property. They want the money. Second, they can't pass it down. Nobody wants it. They don't have any kin, or their children don't want it. They decide to sell. Third, they decide to build on it, or thought they were going to build on it some time ago. Things have changed. They're not going to build on it. They're just paying taxes on it. They're not using it. I'll sell. There's a ton of reasons. Sometimes it's family-owned property. The family don't want it no more. They decide to sell. All we say is we need to have an offer out. Without an offer, we don't make money. Right? And we put offers out to buy land, and that's how we make money. Let's continue to read. Rural land, pros. Appreciation potential. As urban areas expand, nearby rural land can increase in value, especially near highways or new developments. Interesting one. It says as urban areas expand, nearby, we just spoke about Zoom cities, right? Nearby, hour away, 2 hours away. Nearby rural land can increase in value. That is a 10,000% correct. Because as the land appreciates in the city areas, it has to appreciate in those markets that's an hour, 2 hours, sometimes 3 hours away. It's going to follow what those areas do. So if it's going up that way, rural markets are doing the same thing. If it wasn't doing that, everybody would move out of the city an hour away where the price drops by 10x. Right? Common sense. They're not going to ever let it just drop that much or be that far behind. There's a study on this stuff. So it appreciates as the city areas appreciate. Now you show me a city area that hasn't appreciated. Niche, it says niche demand for rural land. The niches is great for farming, recreation, or homesteading markets, all the things that we've been saying, i.e., that's why we came up with a farming program, because we know how to get land in rural markets. Now, once we have that land, we want to show you what you can do with it in the form of farming on your rural land. No restrictions. Inside of city limits, you may be restricted on what you can do as far as farming and what you can put on your property and things like that. So those are the pros. The cons, I'll be speed through this. The cons of rural land: slower liquidity, takes longer to sell, and often has a smaller buyer pool. Now that I don't 100% agree with, because I've sold rural land as fast as 3 hours. I've sold it as soon as I put it up on the market, and I've waited as long as 6 months. So to say it takes longer to sell, I'm not in total agreement with that. You have to just know what markets to be on, and we just discussed that. We show you how to research that you're buying in a rural market that has movement, right? We don't want to invest in a market that doesn't have movement. That's called days on market, DOM. We'll check the DOM or the days on market, and that'll let us know where to invest in. If the days on markets are 90 days or less, invest there. If the days on market naturally says it's, 200 days on the market, you may not want to invest there. Right? Common sense. A con of rural land, it says infrastructure gaps may lack utilities or road access, especially landlocked parcels. I agree 10,000%, but one thing we teach is never to buy landlocked parcels. You don't want to buy a landlocked parcel. Is there a way to unlock it? Yes, but you don't want to get entangled in all of that. You just want to buy a property that has road frontage, especially as a new investor. You don't want to get involved of trying to untangle landlocked properties. So I suggest new investors stay away from landlocked properties, right? And I'll just dive into that really quick. I'll be brief on that. Landlocked properties, you must have an easement on deed or a deeded easement recorded with the county to have access to it. And we'll move away from that. Just don't buy landlocked property as a new investor, right? Last but not least, it says less immediate use can sit idle for years unless you're actively improving it. I don't agree with that one at all, because I wouldn't suggest you buy a property that doesn't have any use as well. So knowing how to evaluate these properties, knowing what you're looking at, knowing how to pick a good property in a rural market is where the education comes in at. And these are the things that we show you. These are the things that we teach you, how to go into these rural markets, evaluate these properties to ensure that you're getting a sound deal. Right now, my last deal on the market was we bought a 19 acre. We bought a 19 acre for $52,000, and it's on the market right now for $158,000. We potentially stand a chance at making $100,000 off of that deal. Who knew? Who knew that you could potentially make $100,000 off of a piece of rural land? Well, common sense. I try to break this into layman's terms. Common sense, whether you're in the city area or if you're in the rural area. The concept and the rules of engagement, they work the same. You have to get it at a good price in order to make money. It doesn't make a difference where I'm looking to buy land at. I need to get it at a good price. And that's overall what the program teaches you, how to get it at a discounted price. If I'm playing in the city area, I'm going to send out an offer at a higher price point, higher percentage, 50, 60% on the dollar, depending on the area. When I'm in a rural market, I drop the percentage, and I like to go after properties ranging anywhere from 20% to 35% on the dollar. I.e., the deal that I just mentioned. We paid $52,000 for it, put it on the market for $150,000. Right? So that's the name of the game. And that is the major difference between rural land and urban land. They both work. Both are very, very valuable. Clearly, if you land property in an urban area or a city area, great, kudos. I applaud that. I've just been preaching that if you're a new investor, right, the entry point to that is going to be more. And we do provide funding to flip land. If you're looking to make money in flip land, we'll put the money up for you, right? It's just going to be more competitive in finding those deals. But who am I to say what competitive looks like? Like I said, I had a young lady that I told not to do it. Coming out the gate, she landed $100,000 deal. So we just never know. But one thing that we do know is if you're not or don't have any offers, whether that's in a city area or whether that's in a rural market, you don't stand a chance at hitting anything. So I hope this live was helpful. Hope you grasp what I was trying to impart as far as the difference between rural land and urban land. Text 1-877-250-7778 to get started today to invest in land. We can surely help you. We'll come back tomorrow. We'll talk about tomorrow. I want to focus on land banks, because what I'm doing now is I'm compiling my land bank list throughout the country. And we'll dive in tomorrow why land banks and why I'm compiling that list. And this is something that I give to my paid community for those that's on the inside. We give this to them. My job is to go out and find these things and give this knowledge out to the community. Unfortunately, I can't service everybody. So we suggest the highest and best use and way to use the Acre Boys is to join the community. That way we can service everyone at the same time through our paid platform. All right. Hope this was helpful. As I said, text 1-877-250-7778. Y'all enjoy the rest of your day. It is hot outside. Stay hydrated, people. Peace. Love.